And thank you so much for joining me today. I am really excited to be able to share and to connect with you, even if it's virtually and not even at the same time. But this is the era of COVID, isn't it? So, what I want to talk about today is COVID and other related issues and just our mental health, our ability to get through this and ways of coping that will help us, sources of resiliency and strength, and also the difficulties that we're going through and how it may be affecting us without us even knowing it. So, the most important things I'm going to say are the first and the last. So, if you want to take a nap in between, I will not be offended because I won't even know. Do your thing, but make sure you pay attention to the first thing I have to say and then come back for the last, because they're the two most important. And in the meantime, in the middle, I'm really going to try and help and give you some good stuff. I'll do my best. I'll do my best. So, first and foremost, I want to say thank you. Thank you for the work that you do. This is the disability community and people supporting folks with disabilities. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being there for people. Thank you for supporting the people who are in the houses and the front lines. Thank you for those of you in the houses, on the front lines. And now with some programs opening back up, thank you so much. Thank you for your courage, for your commitment, and for what you do. You see the people that have been marginalized. You see the unseen. You hear the unheard. You're there for them. And you're there for those who are there for them. Your work is great. So first and foremost, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for what you do every day. Next, the trauma of COVID. So Francine Shapiro is an expert in trauma. Actually, she passed away last summer. Wonderful, wonderful psychologist. Came up with a trauma type of therapy called EMDR, eye movement desensitization reprocessing, that's wonderful for trauma. And what she noticed in her work as she was doing trauma therapy with people is that the big traumas affect you, that we all expect, right? Death, accidents, abuse, these things are very impactful. But she said the little traumas in life also can cause post-traumatic stress disorder or PTSD. So both the big and the little traumas, the big T's and the little T's, can cause post-traumatic stress disorder. So with COVID, there's some big T traumas, but there's also lots of little T traumas, lots of small things that may be affecting us in ways we don't realize. So that's something I'm going to talk about today, both the big and the little. Okay. First, I want to just say I am so sorry for the lives lost. And I know that many folks in Connecticut were lost. I know there are probably now more than 20 people with disabilities who have passed away, who were in services. I know staff have passed away, relatives of many of you. So I just want to take a moment of silence and really honor their lives. Thank you, and I'm so sorry. It's a tough, tough, tough illness because it happened so quickly and we couldn't be with people and we couldn't do our usual ritual of memorials. And it really just pulled the rug out from under us. So I'm so sorry. That's the big T trauma. So I want to talk a little bit about grief and dealing with this, dealing with the big T, dealing with the losses and the impact of the losses. So you may not have been affected directly, but the fear of the loss is also trauma. And now that we're reopening, a lot of people are having a lot of anxiety because those fears are coming back up. And we may also have relatives in areas where it's surging again. All different kinds of things are going on, and these are tough things. So give yourself permission to feel, permission to go through what you need to go through. Find your own space. It's very hard when we're all home or wherever we may be to find a space just for you, unless you're by yourself. But the other day I was taking a walk, and there's a little path that I cut through to go to, towards the shopping center. I was just walking around, and it was a little bit of woods, just a little tiny strip of woods. And there were a bunch of kids playing in the house behind. You could hear lots of voices. And there was this man crouched and looking around. It was like hiding. And he saw me, and he was just like, please don't talk to me. He gave me a little wave. I'm like, oh, that man needed some space. He had to go find a little place to crouch in. So, but to find your own space, a little space for you, is so important. To give yourself the time and the space to feel what you're feeling and go through what you're going through. You need it. And for those of you who have lost somebody, and basically everybody's lost somebody at some point, because you can't get away with living on planet Earth without having some loss, I would like to clarify something. So for years, people have talked about Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's stages of grief as though they are the stages that we go through when we lose people. But actually, she wrote about that and intended that to describe what people go through when they are dying. And when they are facing death, they go through that denial, that anger, that bargaining, that depression, and then the acceptance. We who are losing the people we care about, it's not linear for us. We're not going through these stages. It's more like waves, like a big wave hits you, and then you're okay for a bit, and then a little wave, and then a bit. Another man described it as a roller coaster. And you have to let yourself feel. Give yourself permission to grieve. The Mayo Clinic had some wonderful recommendations that I found to be much more useful. They said, give yourself that permission. Then they said, write a letter to the person you've lost. Sadly, with COVID, we didn't have time. We didn't have time to say the things we wanted to say. And often in this life, we don't. So write that letter down of all the things you wanted to say. It's very therapeutic. As a therapist, I've done that in therapy, and people have really benefited from that. Journal about positive memories. Talk to someone. Find, if it's a therapist or a friend, but you have to have someone you can talk to. It's very important. Understand that those around you are affected as well. A lot of times when we're going through the grief, we don't realize how everybody around us is also affected. And by connecting and sharing, it helps. Especially now when we weren't able to do our traditional types of funerals and memorials. Help another person. That gets you out of view sometimes. And then they say, prepare for the reoccurring grief, for the holidays, for the birthdays, for the anniversaries. So somebody that I do therapy with, her father was brutally murdered 2 years ago. So last year and this year, they celebrated Father's Day and had a cake, and the family got together and talked about him and talked about everything, and prepared knowing that Father's Day would be hard, came together and still celebrated. All these things we have to prepare for, and they recommend that. These are tough times. So give yourself what you need and plan for what might be a tough time. Plan to be together, plan to honor that person, plan to share the good memories. Don't worry about the bad ones. We're going to forget those. but, focus on those. This is also a tough time when we have witnessed the murder of George Floyd, the murder of Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor. There's just such a long, long list. I live a little bit north of Baltimore and I work in Baltimore. Of course, we were unbelievably impacted by the murder of Freddie Gray, but there, my friend's cousin was killed, so many people. But it's interesting. I was in a small group yesterday with the learning community, and we were talking about the fact that we're all watching because of COVID. And I said, yeah, we're really watching now. And this one woman who has a son she worries a lot about, who's African American, said, I want to say people have been watching, but now people are seeing. But this impacts us. If you have ever been the victim of racism or discrimination in any way, these are very triggering times. So you've got COVID and you've got these very triggering events that are horrific. And here's times when people might be having symptoms of PTSD, and you might find yourself experiencing feelings that you didn't think you didn't think would keep coming up, let's put it that way. And you might find yourself really struggling in ways you didn't expect to, because it's brought up things from the past. These are difficult times. It's time to take care of yourself. It's time to take a minute for you. The terrorism attacks from 2019, 2018, 2017, based on race, creed, or color. Oh my God, race, creed, or color. Terrible, terrible. I was able last year to go to El Paso right after the Walmart shooting, because I had been there before talking about trauma with staff supporting folks with intellectual disabilities and supporting some folks with mental health issues. And they asked me to come back, and they said, we are really, really traumatized. And I had nothing. I tried to help them. I wasn't sure what would help. I mean, intellectually telling them about their trauma wasn't that great. They're like, yeah, we know, But one thing I did was apologize over and over again, and they said that helped. But what was so impactful for me, and I don't want to say I sat with over 150 people. There were like 3 groups of 50. And most of them were Latinx, or Latina and Latino. I'm not sure I'm saying that right. I'm trying to say the right thing. But it was so heartbreaking, because every single person kept bringing up the fact that the shooter, after shooting all these people, and the police walked in, was so proud of himself. And he walked over to the white policeman and he said, I didn't shoot one white person. Like that was an accomplishment. And these folks were so traumatized. They were traumatized by the shooting. They were traumatized because most of them, El Paso is a very small town. Everybody knew someone, at least, who knew someone. And most of them knew people who died. And they were sharing with me stories of people. So there was a day program very close to that Walmart, and one of the folks in the day program's uncle was shot and killed. But that day program, that was their community outing. That was where they went every week. And now they were terrified to go anywhere. And it impacted everybody so much. And everywhere you saw signs, El Paso strong, right? But what's really wonderful now to me, are seeing so many different people stand up for justice and seeing this great movement. I was about 3 weeks ago now. Now it's a while. It's maybe more than that. Whenever you see this, it was a while ago. But there was a speech given by Obama, and he said that, this is a really tough time. But, and by the way, people have been saying to him, he said over and over, this is just like the 60s. This is the same. Nothing has changed. Nothing has changed. Here we are, right back where we were. And Obama said, no, two things have changed. Two very, very important things. One, look at the diversity. Look at the diversity of the people protesting. Look at all the faces. And he said, this is really different. And this is really beautiful. And then two, he said, let's look at the young people. There's so many young people standing up. There's so many young people fired up who are like, this must stop. This must stop. So he said, these two things are lighting the way for the future. But it affects us. So I was sitting with my two girlfriends the other day, celebrating one of their birthdays, sitting 6 feet apart outside because it was my friend's birthday. And they both started telling me, both are black, and they both started telling me about how triggered they've been by this because of the protests. And as positive as it is, they both grew up in Baltimore City and were children in the 1968 riots and were having dreams about when the tanks were coming up the road where they lived, their little roads, the tanks were rolling up and people were screaming and fighting, and they said it was the most terrifying thing. And so this has been so triggering for them. So no matter what you've been through, this is a tough time and you have to take care of yourself. And we can't underestimate the importance of what's happening now either. It's a beautiful time. It's a tough time. But things are changing, I believe. But there's a part of our brain called the amygdala that may be flashing when we see the numbers of people dead on the screen and we're watching the stories and we're seeing COVID. And then when we see brutal murders and our brain responds to danger, right? That part called the amygdala. Many of you have heard me talk about the amygdala. And it's flashing danger signals, right? When that danger signal goes off and the amygdala says, oh no, this is not good, it fills you up with adrenaline and cortisol. So you have all this stuff. And in the past, if we were in the jungle, that adrenaline would help us to run, if we had to get away from a lion, or help us to fight, if a bear was eating our little baby and we had to fight that bear off. But we don't have those problems anymore. We've got different problems. We took over the planet and now we have a pandemic. But so we still have those chemicals to fight and flee. And now they eat at us and they cause anxiety, right? They cause feelings. And then we shut down also because we also freeze as a response. Janina Fisher says our attachment issues come up. We might feel very, very needy, or we might get very, very withdrawn. I can't deal with any of you or anything. It's normal. PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, is a continuum. You can have little bits of it. You can have a trauma response. You can be triggered and yet, not be laid out by it, but just have something that's making you not quite right. Yeah, this is normal. It's normally abnormal. I've been saying to people, we're in the new normal, but I don't say that anymore. Now I say it's the new abnormal, right? This is the new abnormal. So I want to break down the symptoms of PTSD as they are in the DSM-5, so we can look at the fact that you might be experiencing little pieces of it and not even realizing it. So number one, re-experiencing, being in a loop. The other day I was in a supermarket And this young woman with Down syndrome, she had her mask on and she was pushing the cart for her mother who had her mask. And I was 6 feet away with my mask. And I just praised her like, oh, that's great. You're helping your mom. Yeah, I just want to say something. And she turned to me and she said, my father died. Exactly like that. I said, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. And her mother shook her head and she said, he died 20 years ago. But she was re-experiencing her trauma because of the trauma of COVID and her whole life being turned upside down. So she was right back. And then she said, so she went to her worst trauma, and then she went to her most recent trauma, which is what people do. They go right back to the worst trauma. So many of us might be re-experiencing when we lost a parent or a loved one or a difficult time. Then we go right back, we go over there, and then we go to our most recent. And then she said, and I lost my job, I lost my job, I lost my job, I lost my job. See? And she had a shirt that said Michael's, the craft store. And she worked at Michael's. She said, see? And that had triggered her. So how many of you are having a hard time sleeping? This is also a symptom of trauma, right? Waking up, not getting a restful night's sleep. How about having weird dreams, right? Here's what's going on. And it's been going on. It's been, a while now. But our subconscious has constructs or little boxes where we organize reality, right? And we got it all figured out. I go to my job, I have my family, I after my job, I go home, I work out, or I don't work out. You don't work out if you're me, but maybe you work out or did and have dinner, blah, blah, blah. All of a sudden, you don't go to your job, you work from home, or you don't work, or you do this, or you don't do that. Boom, everything is different. And so the subconscious is trying to reorganize the constructs. When does your subconscious talk to you? When you sleep. So you're having, maybe, I know I am, weird dreams. All my friends are, strange dreams, right? And not getting a restful sleep, waking, falling asleep, up at night. These are small T's and small symptoms of PTSD. Hypervigilance, any of you getting really focused, obsessed, or developing phobias? I myself am cleaning everything in sight. This is not my nature. I don't know what got into me. The other day we ran out of paper towels and I was like, you would have think, that I got COVID because I was like, oh my God, we don't have paper towels. What are we going to do? And now we know where to find them. It's not like the early days. I got my paper towels and I feel better now, but I don't have to scrub everything every minute. I really don't. I'm a little hypervigilant. It's a little bit of a symptom of trauma. Dissociating, we'll talk more about that. Disconnecting, right? How about negative alterations in cognition and mood? A sense of impending doom. People are saying to me, it's never going to be the same. Now, it's not going to be the same, but it's going to be okay. We have to maintain hope. Hope. That's why I have my sign, hope. Because there are a lot of really smart people working on this. Yeah, and there's, right now, as of the time I'm speaking, there's 140 vaccinations being developed. There's 16 being tested. There's 3 that are very promising. There's a lot of smart people working on this. There's also treatments that are being developed. And these drug companies are very motivated. They have very, very smart people, and they're shooting for the big prize, which is lots and lots of money, as well as helping people. So I believe in all the smart people and all the motivated people, and we're going to figure this out just no time soon. So, but that sense of doom, that sense of loss is going to never go away, and it's always going to be horrible. That's a symptom of trauma. And finally, how about hyperarousal? How many of you have kids in your house that are really hyped up more than they ever have been before? breaking things. I have somebody that I see for therapy that I was just doing teletherapy with, but I haven't been able to work with him for 3 weeks because he was in such a state of hyperarousal, so keyed up because he thought he had been exposed and he was going to die, and he's screaming he's going to die, and he broke his phone and his computer. I got an email from his father. We have to wait until we get everything set up again. That easy explode type of way of being, that your amygdala is firing danger, you're filled up with all kinds of chemicals, and you have no place to release them, you can become easily hyper-aroused. Oh, Terapu is a very brilliant neuropsychiatrist who says there's two categories of PTSD. You have your hyperarousal, hypervigilance, those states that you're in, but then you have that dissociation that I mentioned earlier, completely not being present, total removal of self. So in extreme cases of people that have severe abuse, that's where you might see multiple personalities or people that are totally, blanking out for long periods of time. But we can be doing this in smaller degrees. You just watched a TV show and you can't remember any of it. You walked into a room and stood there for a while and can't remember why you're there. Now that's kind of normal, but at the same time, if it's been a while, you might be like dissociating, trying to check out of reality because reality is very overwhelming. Now is a very hard time for people also because we've been through the initial trauma of COVID, but now there's a lot of fear around opening back up and negotiating the anxiety of that, right? And how to connect or how to not connect. And many people might find themselves withdrawing again. And, we're going through things that we don't realize we're going through. And everybody's different and everybody's going through something unique to them. But it is time to take care of yourself. Time to give yourself a break. Sometimes it's okay if the only thing you did today was breathe. Give yourself a break. And I don't know about you, but I'm not as productive as I could be. I'm like moving through molasses. And I thought, wow, I have all this time now. I'm going to start a new book. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. Have I written anything? About 3 pages. I just am moving so slow because it's very difficult because our subconscious is working overtime trying to renegotiate reality. Okay, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. This is hard. It's exhausting. You might be tired and not know why. Because it's tough. Your reality got flipped upside down. It's not easy. So the little traumas, Bessel van der Kolk has talked about what he calls pre-trauma conditions unique to COVID. Not being able to predict what's going to happen. Our frontal lobe, our executive functioning, relies on being able to predict, right? You predict, you plan, you get up in the morning, you say, okay, I'm going to make my lunch, and that's what I'm going to eat at lunch. And then I got to talk to this one. I got to write this report. I got to do that. And you're predicting everything and setting it all up. And then I'm going to go here. And then all of a sudden we're not doing that. And for us, as I said earlier, it's not the new normal anymore because every day is abnormal. Every day is different. And now we're reconnecting in some ways, but not in others. And we have to be careful, and we're wearing masks, and we're not sure how much to integrate, and we're not sure what's going to happen with schools. It's terrifying. This is a pre-trauma condition, not being able to predict, being isolated. We're coming out of isolation little bit by little bit, but we're still pretty isolated. And that in itself is its own type of challenge, right? We're not connecting the way we did before, and we need those connections. Being immobile, not being able to move. Thank goodness the weather is warmer, because the first few months were very hard when we couldn't just walk and run and do, because our bodies had stored up all that cortisol and adrenaline and all of our traumas and all of our fears. The body keeps the score, according to Bessel van der Kolk. The body holds it all in and keeps it. So we have to release it. That's why it's good to walk and move every day. Move in the way that's best for you. I always recommend yoga. Do I do it? No, but I tell everybody else to do it. It looks like it hurts. I'm kind of a coward and a wimp. But do whatever works for you to move, to release from the body. That body work is important. Loss of a sense of safety, right? Every day we get different information about what's safe and what's not safe. So right there, that's psychologically frightening. That creates anxiety that we don't even realize we have. Or maybe we do realize it. Finally he talked about the loss of sense of purpose, but that does not apply to all of you. You have a great purpose. You have a wonderful mission. Supporting folks with disabilities, supporting the supporters, moving the system forward, whatever piece you're doing, you are really critical. Seeing the unseen, being there for folks who have so few people there for them and who really, really need it at this point. And trying to help them get back to a sense of normalcy. It's so tough. Thank you. You feel trapped? Eleanor Roosevelt said, if you can live through that, you can live through anything. You gain strength, courage, and confidence by every experience in which you really stop to look fear in the face. You are able to say to yourself, I lived through this horror. I can take the next thing that comes along. So don't underestimate your own strength. That's the other thing. If you think about what you've been through in your life, and I can pretty much be assured that you've been through some things, because this is not an easy planet. This is a tough place to live, planet Earth. Look at your strength. Don't underestimate it. And I bet when you were going through those things, you said, I can't do it. I can't take it. But you did. So you have to believe in yourself. You've got it. Possible antidotes for the pre-trauma conditions. If you can't predict anything, you can predict what you're going to do. You can set a few goals for yourself every day, set some projects, focus on that because you can do that. Not allowing yourself to be controlled by your environment, but acting on it, having agency, right? Moving your own world forward really helps you get that sense of being able to predict things back. Connecting with people, very important. Relationships are so critical. We need to connect with people. Relationships are what inoculate us against trauma. And if we have to use technology, we're going to have to use it. Zoom, Zoom, Zoom. Go to meeting, go to meeting, go to meeting. WebEx, WebEx, WebEx. And, socially distant. Whatever you're going to do, distance yourself, but, connect. And of course, move that body. Have a dance party in your living room. Nobody has to watch. Release it. It feels good. Engage in safe practices. We've all heard what they are. We know every day it changes. Well, we're this, do that. But we know the basics and we know what's safe. But also I want to talk about emotional safety. Talk to safe people. That's really important. Have somebody that you can really trust, that you can just turn to. Look at those people in your life that you can really open up to and find them and connect with them and spend time with them. That's important for mental health. Limit your news intake. My dear friend Jane has fallen into the rabbit hole of CNN. She talks about all these guys. You would think that Don Lemon is her best friend. I'm like, he doesn't know you, honey. But she's just watching to the point where it's created so much anxiety. And I was doing the same thing. It's easy to do. I really recommend that you structure your news intake. Okay, limit the time that you're going to watch or read or whatever. You need to do it. We want to be informed. But if you do it over and over and over again and you get in that loop, it can be very traumatizing in its own way. So limit. Find ways to make a small difference. Find ways to have an impact. I don't have to tell you that because you all have an impact. And the work you do is so important. And remember, this too shall pass. Yes, that's the one thing we can always rely on, change. The Chinese character for crisis means dangerous opportunity. This is an opportunity. For what? I don't know. But it's because it's different for everybody, right? This isn't like a present neatly wrapped up with a pretty little bow on it. It's not like Christmas, right? But it is an opportunity. It is the possibility of tremendous growth. Many of us have realized ways we could do things that we didn't think we could do. Many of us have found strength we didn't know we had, right? There's opportunity here. It's time to reflect. So it's funny because I've had two friends that I've socially distanced with in the last 2 weeks who have both really just turned tremendous corners during this period. So my one friend, she's I don't know if you know somebody who's always complaining about their spouse. She was constantly complaining about her husband. He did this and he did that. And I can't believe he did. I mean, we were about to just take a basket and pass it around to get some money for a good lawyer. Just divorce him. We can't hear one more thing about this poor man. We can't watch. And, a GoFundMe page maybe. So she was driving us all crazy. So I had her over and I was ready to hear all about what he did during COVID. She's like a type A personality and she's always traveling and going and doing and, very connected. And he's kind of a homebody and kind of slow and nice guy. But she's home now. And she said to me, you know what? I'm really appreciating my husband. I'm not going to say his name in case anyone traces this back. He does a lot. And he really does a lot for my son. And she's going on and on about how great he is. Hallelujah. I can save some money. My other friend was over last night, true story. And she's like, wow, I've been with this guy for so long, but now that we're just like sitting together, stuck together, I realize he doesn't get me. I don't get him. And we're just not happy together at all. And we don't have any kids. And I think I'm going to make a change. And I think he's not going to be upset by it, that this is going to be good for both of us. And they're really poor because they have this giant house. And she said, and I'm going to put this house up for sale. I don't need this house to be happy. And this will release both of us. Then we can make the right decision and move forward. And it sounded like she already had, right, made that decision. And I had known that she wasn't happy. I was like, wow. Both of my friends took this time of COVID and really reflected and are making moves to make their lives better in two separate directions. So this is a time to reflect. It's forced us, right? It's forced us to examine our lives and think about what's important and let go of what's not important. I saved some money. What's important about getting your nails done? Nothing. I guess supporting the nail shop. But, it's a time to reflect and looking at deeper things, that worrying about things that we didn't have to worry about, right? It's time to let go of a lot of things. Let's talk about resiliency. That becomes the most important topic in a time of trauma. How to be strong, how to be resilient. And I often talk about healing because the trauma has already happened. But in pre-trauma conditions, and when we have small bits of PTSD, resilience becomes the most important thing, and how to build our resilience. I believe there are 3 aspects to resilience: optimism, engagement, and creativity. And by shoring up ourselves in each of these areas, we can strengthen our resilience. Let's talk about optimism. Optimism is a muscle. I used to think you were born an optimist or born a pessimist. That's because I was born a pessimist. I was like Chicken Little when I came out of the womb. Oh my God, the sky is falling, the sky is falling, the sky is falling. That is my nature. Oh no, ah. I'm a coward. I was born a coward. And I'm always afraid. Oh no, this is going to happen. Oh no, but I read books. I read positive psychology. I read Martin Seligman's Learned Optimism, and I studied Buddhism. I chanted Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, and I said, I can become an optimist. Yes, this is my personal journey. From being born a pessimist and transforming into an optimist. You can do it. It's a muscle. Many of you are already optimists, I know that. And I really admire it. So each night you want to list 3 things you're grateful for. You know, Oprah talked a lot about a gratitude journal, right? And we heard a lot about that. But I always said, well, I should do that. But at the end of the night, I just want a glass of wine and watch some Netflix and kick back. I used to say, watch some Netflix and chill. And some younger people told me, stop saying that, because that definitely wasn't what was happening. So I don't say that anymore. But I feel like writing in a journal. What I do now is in the morning, I will write down what I am grateful for from the day before. And think about a time in your life that was worse and how great it is now. Sometimes we need to take a minute and take stock, get some perspective. You have come a long way. I know you have. List the ways in which you've grown and changed. Celebrate that. Look at you. Look how far you've come. Write a thank you card to somebody you feel grateful for. Thank you so much. You helped me so much. That is a wonderful gift for someone, but it's a great gift to yourself because it's saying, look how far I've come. And here's the gratitude that I have. Gratitude's a big piece of optimism, critical and central. People who are optimists have a lot of appreciation. Affirm your beliefs. I think it's so important. I just created a little workbook, my book about hope. Hope is so important to sit down and say, this is what I believe in. Whatever your beliefs are, your spiritual, religious, life, and ultimately your belief in yourself. This is a time for us to affirm what we believe in and to believe in you. There was a study done by Emmons. He has a lab, Dr. Robert Emmons, and in his lab, he studies gratitude. He's a positive psychologist. And this was a very interesting study that he did. He took 3 groups of people. Group number 1, they all had to journal. They got journals. This was the study. Group number 1 had to write down just the good things that happened that day. At the end of the day, they had to record just the positives. Group number 2 had to write down just the facts, good and bad. And group number 3 wrote down only the bad things. So group number 1 would write, had a great lunch, took a walk, talked to a friend, had a great talk with a friend. Group number 2, who's writing the facts, would write, had a great lunch, got a bill in the mail I didn't want to pay, talked to a friend, took a walk, but then saw that my tire was flat, right? The facts. Group number 3, just the bad things, would write, got a bill I didn't want to pay, saw that my tire was flat. Over time, and it wasn't even that long of a time, the first group, now everybody was just randomly mixed, but the first group became very different from the second and the third. The first group reported having a higher level of alertness, a better ability to focus, more energy, and more enthusiasm about their life. And they were saying things like, my life is good. They reported feeling optimistic, feeling like they had a lot of hope for the future. Group number 2 actually became less optimistic. One thing I have learned is that you're either moving forward or you're going backwards. There's no maintaining. There's no standing still in this life full of motion. You're losing ground or you're gaining ground. And group number 2 that was just reporting the facts actually lost ground, actually became less optimistic. And then group number 3 became very pessimistic, like reported feeling very discouraged about their future, not liking their life, feeling more tired, less energetic. And think about what we do. We end up focusing on our problems, right? It's so easy to do. Maybe not you. You guys are optimists. I bet you are. But it's so easy to say, let me think about what's wrong and what I have to fix. What are the problems I have to fix today? Oh, and what's going to go wrong next? And what do I have to prepare for? Right? So how can we shift? Just make that shift to focus on what's right. What's right with you? Look at you. Look at how much you've accomplished and what's right in your life and what's right about those around you. I recommend in group homes or in settings where people are at home together that we have appreciation circles. You know, at Thanksgiving, a lot of times we'll say, let's go around the table and everybody say what they're grateful for. You do that every day, then you don't have to write a journal. And because some people can't write or don't want to write, other people do. But I think if we have an appreciation circle every day, I know some group homes that have started doing it now. Let's every day say 3 things that we appreciate. And for folks who don't use words, point to something you appreciate. Appreciation circles. Let's have celebrations. We can celebrate. We can celebrate sitting in our house. We can put a candle in a cupcake. We can do anything we want to do in our house. But we can celebrate things more. Little things need to be celebrated. Yay, I finished school this semester. Yay, yay, my job didn't fire me. Yay, yay, I still have a job. My husband, had a big project and he finished it. I said, we are celebrating. We got takeout from our favorite restaurant, wiped it down and had a good meal. Celebrations are important. They increase optimism. And optimism increases resiliency. You can withstand a lot when you have hope. Engagement, activity, play, interaction, being here and now. It's very important if you're dealing with trauma from the past, if you've been triggered by racism, by things that have happened to you, by tough times. Get yourself in the present. Just attach your feet to the present moment. My dearest friend, a very close friend of mine, has had more abuse. She was sexually abused by several people growing up. She's had such a hard life, lost both parents in bad ways, bad stuff, but she does really well. And she said to me, the key to my happiness is being in the here and now. She plays a lot. She does hula hooping. She's very active. She has a job that's very interactive. She's constantly interacting with people. She has many friends. She trained herself to be in the present. And engagement does that. And that's how a big piece of healing from trauma, healing from past trauma. Play is very important. Stuart Brown wrote a beautiful book called Play. He said, play can become a doorway to a new self. Play for yourself, play with others, play games, take those board games out. I play on my phone excessively. Actually, it's a bad habit, but I love it. Playing actually helps you wire up your brain differently. You make new neural connections, it turns out, when you're playing. And it brings you into the here and now. It propels you forward. It gets you unstuck. Playing is actually really important, and not just for kids. Play, play, play. And creative living. So the people I know that are suffering the most right now are people that are stuck in very rigid ways of living, and it's so tough for them, right? I'm counseling several people. One has autism, and it's so hard that he lost his job and his routine, and it's been very painful. And we're trying to set up a new routine and make those new, neural pathways in a new routine and have, cues everywhere so he can have his new life. But that is a very difficult transition for him. And somebody else that I work with that, just relied so much on their social interaction with other people and their happy hour and their this and their that, and that's all gone. So creative living, Zoom happy hours, all different, living with imagination. So the people that I know that kind of adjusted the most quickly are the most fluid. People who, let's do a workaround, let's live this way, living with imagination. But again, we can train ourselves to be like this. We can retrain ourselves to think differently. We can make a new neural pathway. We can have that workaround. And I bet by now, most of you have already done this. But creative living is a real key to resiliency, to not be too attached, because those attachments can cause us to suffer when we lose them, right? Okay, well, how can I try this? Let me work this angle. Let me try a new way of doing things. Let me redefine my way of being. There's a whole world for us to explore. And we can do that if we can hold on to our hope and live creatively. It's not easy, I know, but it is the way forward. Tanya Singer talks about compassion-based action. And she says, we talk a lot about compassion fatigue for those who are helpers. And I know many of you listening are helpers. You're people who give everything to other people. She said the key to not having that burnout is to have a strong core, a sense of self. And she says, instead of saying compassion fatigue, I want to talk about empathy fatigue, because empathy is you give it all away, according to her. And compassion is you keep yourself. You take care of yourself. You do for you. You play. You have your friends. You have your life. And you have a sense of who you are. And then you help others. You stand in your own ground and don't lose yourself helping others. Give, but don't give away, right? Keep the you, build your core. Nichiren Daishonin says, if you light a lantern for another, it will also brighten your own way. So you help others standing where you're standing, then the lantern lights the way for both of you. There's an EMDR technique called the butterfly, which will calm you down if you are feeling anxious. And if you are in a loop where you keep remembering something or thinking about something, it will help you get past that loop. Cross your arms and tap rhythmically back and forth while you think about what might be upsetting you. Think about it. Breathe. Do this for 2 to 3 minutes. Stop. Do it again. Breathe. Tap back and forth rhythmically. You will find yourself feeling better. Just a little technique I thought I'd share. Now, this is the end that I told you was most important. Daisaku Ikeda is a great Buddhist scholar. There he is with Nelson Mandela, two great minds. Nelson Mandela taught us so much. There is a man who was a victim of racism. There's a man who had trauma. He was in prison for 27 years due to racism, due to discrimination. And what did he do? He trained himself while in prison. He didn't just crumple. He learned to box. He studied. He organized. He came out. He not only changed South Africa, he changed the world. Daisaku Ikeda says, those living in an age of crisis must become the pioneers of a better age. That's you. Because you are the people who are humanists. You did not, I am sure, you did not choose the line of work that you are in human services for the money. Just a wild guess. You chose it because you care about people. And you're the people that need to be the leaders of the future. Because we need to enter an age of humanism, an age where people count, where people matter. And you are the ones that will lead us there. There's a concept in organizational psychology to lead from any chair. Whatever chair you're sitting in, it's the chair of a leader, because the humanists are the ones that will show everybody the way. So thank you so much for all that you do. Thank you for listening today. Best of luck with everything, and enjoy it. Whatever you're doing, take time to enjoy and celebrate you. Thank you very much.